Hey, deserving listeners, it's time to watch 90 Day Fiancé. As I always say, don't use YouTube as a replacement for therapy. If you need a therapist, get one. You deserve it. Let's watch the show.
Why you all time say like,
What'd I do?
you don't need say what people want here. You need say what you feel, what you think about this.
I know you all know that because I read your comments below that you are definitely in Julia's camp here of like, Brandon, why don't you ever talk back? And Julia is being very articulate about that. You need to talk about what's in here. Well, if he has had a lifetime of being treated like this times 10, he has something in his heart, but doesn't have a connection with it. And so doesn't have the, particularly under intimidation, doesn't have access to it. So that's always been the question. Does he have a hard time asserting himself, or does he not even know who he is and what he wants? It seems to be the latter, but maybe we'll find out here because she's being very forward but nice about it. So let's see what he says.
I not say because this is not my mother. This is not my home. But you need say.
She's just angry. Okay, it's okay.
We have only 90 days. It's a short time for marriage. I changed all my life for him, and I hope him change life for me too.
So this is often the narrative that they will have on the show, which is, I need him to change for me. I've changed for him. He needs to change for me. Okay, that I think there's some logic to that, I suppose. But I think what's really more fundamentally going on here, and I don't know if Julia knows this, is that she is wanting him to know who he is and what he wants. And there's a chance that he just doesn't have that capability. I think she believes that he can assert himself if he just chose to. But there's a possibility that he doesn't even know who he is and what he wants. And he doesn't even know what he's supposed to assert. So when we watch that last scene, Mom is coming down on Brandon. You could imagine in Brandon's heart there would be some statement of just like, Mom, back off. But there's a possibility that nothing was going on inside of him, that he was purely focused on what needs to be done to please her and please Julia, and no concern was on what was going on for him on the inside. That certainly is exhibited by his behavior. He's very pleasing to the mom, looking down. She walks off. Julia says, stuff to him, and he says, oh, she's just angry. Don't worry about it. What we'd imagine if there was a connection with who he is and who he is actually is involved in some sort of pushback on the mom, we'd imagine there would be a different sort of statement from him, something like, yeah, you know what? I get it. My mom can be really harsh sometimes, and it gets to me. And I'm sorry that you had to watch that. And I don't think it's a good idea to confront her because things aren't going to go well. Okay, so you could have the same message to Julia of just like, yeah, I think you should just try to let it go. But you would hear something along the lines of how he felt. But there's nothing there. I don't think we've ever heard him say anything about how he feels or what he thinks. It's only about what Julia wants or what Mom wants. You'll hear him say some things kind of along the lines of pushing back on the mom, but how do we know that's really from him and not what he thinks Julia wants? Or he does have kind of a connection with what he wants, and that's the expression of that. Anyway, let's continue to watch this.
Him need be more strong, need to change life. But how him change life if mother all the time take him and say what him need do?
Right. So this is another pattern that we will see, is that she is saying, we need to get rid of the mom. If we can get rid of the mom, then it'll solve all of our problems. I certainly would imagine that if they moved out, it would solve a good number of their problems, but it might not solve what she is running into right now, which is this lack of self that she's experiencing in him. If they move out, his lack of self might not be obvious as much as when he is around his mom, but that lack of connection with himself will be retained. And so if I were her friend, if I were Julia's friend, I would throw this out to her, and say, there's a possibility that you're actually asking for something that he's going to need like 10 years of therapy to get. And you might want to just accept that and make a decision based on that possibility instead of, well, if we can just get rid of the parents, then everything will be fine. Because I don't think that that's necessarily true.
She looked at him and said, little boy, how we live together. I worry about this. He need study take care of me.
Don't touch me.
Okay.
Interesting. So now she's expressing anger. Don't touch me. So I'm guessing she is frustrated with the pattern that she's seeing. And I think she's, through her anger, trying to communicate to him, I want you to do what I tell you to do. What does that look like? Kind of looks like the way the mom treats him, right? We have seen that pattern where the mom will be intimidating and angry at Brandon. So I'm actually kind of glad we're seeing this. I'm not happy for the family, and I'm not happy for Julia and Brandon, but this is a common thing that happens in life. Whereas, let me explain. You're a child and you're being intimidated and you're being very pleasing and you're not developing a sense of who you are and you're being immature in a lot of ways. And that provokes your parents to treat you even more like a child. So it ends up kind of becoming a vicious circle. That parents treat you like you're a little child. You retain that childishness and that immaturity. And then as you grow up, you're still immature. And because you're immature, you actually provoke your parents to actually treat you harshly. And then you leave your family, but you've internalized that relationship. You've internalized that harsh other and the scared, immature, self. And that becomes a representation or a working model of a relationship inside of you. And then through repetition compulsion or projective identification or reenactments, we will recreate those relationships in our adult life. And how do we do that? Well, we subconsciously socialize other people to agree with our projection. I don't know, this is just a lot of speculation, but it's possible that Brandon has been subconsciously, he's not aware of it, subconsciously socializing Julia to recreate the relationship that he had with his mom in the relationship between Julia and Brandon. And how do you do that? Well, you do it very subtly. You do it by not being assertive because you know that if you're not assertive and you don't push back on the mom, that is definitely going to bother Julia. Julia's going to get upset, and then Julia's going to come down on him. And then now you've recreated the situation. Why do we recreate relationships from our past even though they were bad relationships? Well, there's a lot of reasons. One, we're comfortable with them. It's just the way things were. Two, we have a lot of associations with love, because if it was a loving relationship with your mom, you will recreate that because you're trying to attain love, and you just associate all these things with love, even though you probably should separate them out. The third reason is we're trying to resolve them. We're trying to, through our recreation, we're hoping subconsciously that it will go differently this time and we can right the wrong that happened in the past. The problem is that when we very effectively recreate the past and the present, we most assuredly will not have a good experience, which seems like where this is headed. And now we've gotten to the point where Julia is saying, don't touch me. She's that angry at him. So it's not a good development for the two of them. I'm sad to see. If they had a family therapist, they could help them.
I didn't want to anyway.
And then he says, I didn't want to anyway. So this is one of the couples this season that I could find some solace in, of just like, well, at least these two talk to each other well, and now they're talking to each other in this very hurtful way. It's very sad to see.
Julia's been living with us for almost a month now, and I've enjoyed having her. But now Brandon is not taking care of his responsibilities any longer. We have chores on the farm that have to be done, and Brandon has just kind of thrown his hands up, and it's all about Julia, and I don't have time for you or your farm.
There's nothing wrong with the parents saying, hey, if you're going to live here, you're going to do the following responsibilities. Now, with Julia, that's a little bit of a question mark there, but at least for Brandon. And okay, that's fine. Now, how do you communicate that to a 27-year-old man that is your son? If he were 15, there's a different version of that you could say to him. He's 27. Presumably he's moving out soon. He has a guest that he's trying to get to know better. And so how do you communicate that? Well, you might say something like, look, I know that you're a 27-year-old man, and I want to respect that. And I know you're planning on moving out soon. You're planning on getting married soon. But in the time until you leave, I think it's important that you uphold your responsibilities in this house. What do you think, Brandon? And then Brandon would say, hopefully, if he was in touch with who he is, he would say, well, let me think about that. On one hand, yeah, I want to help out. I want to do my responsibilities for sure. But on the other hand, I'm having so many other things pulling at my attention. I'm still going to work full time. And when I come home, Julia's been just sitting here all day, and I really want to spend a lot of time with her. And so, to be honest, I guess what I'm asking is, could I scale back a little bit on my chores around the house? I'm really sorry about that, parents, but I think that's where I'm at right now. What do you think about that? Okay, you go back and forth. You have a negotiation, you have a conversation. Let's see how they do it.
And I'm getting very angry about this.
And I can understand he wants to spend time with Julia, but the farm chores don't stop.
Okay, the farm chores do not stop. He's moving out soon, presumably, unless you manage to sabotage his relationship. What's your plan after he leaves? Okay, there's a lot of work that needs to be done. I can respect that. How are you going to get that done given the circumstances? Or are you going to use this as an excuse to slam him, to try to draw a wedge between the two of them? Is there something else going on here that isn't being explicit? I don't know. It's total speculation. Let's watch.
I think it's going to be a problem. I think it's going to be an issue. I really do.
Unless Julia grows to love the farm, and that would be a win-win.
That's what I hope for. I hope that she has a change of ways, so to speak, and gets involved with this and starts having an appreciation. Because, otherwise, I don't know if it's going to work.
Wow. What? Okay. I don't know if I'm understanding this correctly, but what the parents are saying right now is they're hoping and expecting and demanding, emotionally at least, that they never leave the farm and that Julia not only stay on the farm, but fall in love with the farm and want to work on the farm. What? Have they asked her what she wants? I don't think either one of them want to stay on the farm. I think they want to move out for a lot of reasons, some commonplace reasons and some very specific reasons. But let me rewind that, because the way the dad is talking right now is very interesting. Let's rewind.
I think it's going to be a problem. I think it's going to be an issue. I really do.
Unless Julia grows to love the farm, and that would be a win-win.
That's what I hope for. I hope that she has a change of ways, so to speak, and gets involved with this and starts having an appreciation. Because, otherwise, I don't know if it's going to work.
Starts having appreciation. I don't know, but when I hear that phrase and I hear that anger, at least that's what I'm interpreting. What I'm imagining is underneath this whole thing, and this is interesting because this would explain a lot, that the two of them, the mom and the dad, both have traumas regarding underappreciation being expressed to them. Just go with me on this again. I mean, I can't imagine a more speculative thing, but that the two of them, from a very early point in their life, have had a theme of them not being appreciated. That maybe they worked really hard as children and were abused or neglected or mistreated or something, such that they both had themes as they were growing up, being underappreciated, working really hard, trying to impress, trying desperately to impress. Please love me. Please see me. Please notice me. Please appreciate me. Please notice all the work I'm putting into this so that you can have one moment of being proud of me. And in this situation, because of those relational traumas, they haven't been resolved in therapy, Julia comes into the house, and all those traumas become very triggered because they're trying to get Julia to appreciate what they're doing. And if she doesn't appreciate and doesn't fully accept and want to join their, I'm just going to call it a little cult kind of, it's not a cult, but it has that kind of feel to it, like be one of us, join the farm. That's mean. That's incredibly mean, but I just gonna throw that out. If I was talking to the parents alone, I would probably be blunt and say, you kind of have that vibe as you're talking right now. I'm just going to tell you the truth. As a family therapist, I learned if I had a good enough relationship with them that they would appreciate it, hopefully. Anyway, point is that as they are really trying to get her approval, which might sound kind of weird, right? The dad, I don't know how old he is, but how strange it is that when he was 5 and 10 years old and not being appreciated, and he has these traumas around that, feeling a lifetime of underappreciation, why would he need appreciation from a woman in her mid-20s from another country? Well, when we have those traumas, they're always there, and we're always looking for some excuse to have it expressed and triggered or something. And so I wonder if that is happening right now, because it would explain why they're desperate to make her like the farm. But of course, as I've been talking about in other episodes, when we recreate these past relationships, when we have negative or traumatizing relational experiences that are internalized, and we recreate those. So, imagine the dad here is with his parents, so he's being underappreciated. So he has judgmental, dismissing, unappreciative parents, and he's desperately trying to get their approval and attention and appreciation. And then that becomes internalized in terms of he has a version of himself that he internalizes, and he has a version of the other that he internalizes. And then he recreates this by projecting onto Julia his parent figures that were underappreciative and didn't, provide any kind of indications of care. And so he's projecting on, and meanwhile, all of his traumas are being triggered because he's projecting that. Because, us watching, Julia doesn't approve or disapprove. She just wants to marry Brandon and live a regular life in their own apartment, not on the farm. It's not a matter of her not approving of the farm. It's a matter of her just not wanting to be on a farm. That's not her goal in life. A lot of people don't have a goal of living on a farm. Some people do, but Julia doesn't, and has never expressed that. But so you recreate that, and any indication that she doesn't want to be on the farm, you're now feeling as though you're 5 years old and you're being underappreciated, and then you're hurt. And whenever we get hurt, we get angry, and then we transform that anger into hostility. Again, total speculation, but it's an interesting hypothesis, I think. Let's continue watching.
One day we'd love to see them take over the farm. I mean, I want to see this work. Ron wants to see this work. And hopefully she's not going to try and have Brandon separate from us. Instead, we'll be gaining a daughter instead of losing a son.
Well, you'd be gaining a daughter either way. But isn't that interesting that if he moves out, which I thought that was the assumption. I thought the parents knew that he was moving out. But they're saying that if he moves out, they're losing a son. And that is very interesting, is it not? Now, maybe they're desperate for help around the farm. Wouldn't be unusual for that. Maybe financially the farm will completely fall apart if they have to pay someone to do the work that Brandon is doing. That's also possible. But, and I would understand the feelings of pain and worry around that. But to just force people to do something that they don't want to do, and to be deluded to think that they would want to, but maybe Brandon, anyway, this is interesting. This is an interesting corner that the parents have painted themselves into. Let's see what happens. This is probably going to get ugly, I think.
We've got to take care of her as well as him. She can't work right now. She's not bringing any income in. The reality is while you're here and while you're eating and while you stay warm, you got to do something.
So on one level, you might be thinking, wow, she's a guest. Why are you forcing her to work? Now, some people would comment below, people who work on farms or know about farm culture, and understand that even if you're a guest, you might be asked to help around because it's just a matter of logistics. There's just so much to do around a farm that things just wouldn't function unless everyone lended a hand. Now, as I've been saying from the beginning, there'd be nothing wrong with them going to Julia and saying, look, I know you're a guest and I want you to feel comfortable and I want to be hospitable, but we're kind of in a bind here because we have a lot of things that have to get done around this house. And let's have a conversation about what you're willing to do and if you're willing to do it, because I sure wish that you would be. It'd really be nice. I'd really appreciate it if you were able to help out. What would you like to do to help out? And what schedule would you like to work on? Maybe you want to do this. Maybe you want to do that. I'm guessing that Julia would say something like, okay, fine. I don't mind doing housework because I'm familiar with that, but farm work, it freaks me out. The animals are terrifying to me because they are terrifying to her. So maybe there'd be some sort of discussion that they could have there. I'm guessing that Julia would be open to that, but they haven't done that. They're just saying, look, you're going to be a full-on farmhand as if you were born and raised on a farm, or else. Yikes. If you haven't become a patron of the podcast yet, you can go to patreon.com, become a patron. That's how we know you like what we're doing. A lot of you have become patrons, which is really, really nice of you. And everyone out there, please take care of yourself because you deserve it. You really, really do.